How do I tell my fiance that I'm not attracted to him? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I sent me on Instagram. My fiance and I met in school over 10 years ago. We started running in the same friend circle, and after that we became best friends. Now, I will say I always knew that he had a thing for me, but he was always so soft and gentle. He was always my best friend that I could tell everything to. And when it came to guys, he always gave me the best advice. I knew he had my back always. After high school, he went away for college and I stayed home. And I started dating a ton of guys. Of course, I kept him updated on everybody I was dating. During the summer, he came to visit us, and that's when I realized he had a huge glow up. But he was still the same guy. He asked me if we could go to dinner, the movies. Essentially, they were like mini dates. And the more I hung out with him, the more I thought, okay, maybe I am attracted to him. At least I wanted to believe it. I mean, he'd be the perfect man for me. We know each other so well. He makes me laugh. He cares about me. My family already loves him. So I decided to give him a chance. This might sound bad, but his glow up was kind of like a trick. It tricked me into believing that I was attracted to him, but then I tricked myself into believing that I could be with him. When he asked me to be his girlfriend, I said yes. But anytime he tried to kiss me, I would always feel weird. He finally had to go back to college, and this is when I had to muster up the courage to finally kiss him. And so I did. It was not a good kiss. In fact, I didn't feel anything. But I continued to trick myself into believing that I'll feel something for him eventually. He was so in love with me. All he did was talk about me, always texting me, calling me. He was the perfect boyfriend. A year later, he actually proposed. And at this point, I had convinced myself long enough that I liked him. So I said yes. But as we started planning, I realized I am not attracted to him at all. Part 2 is, how do I confess to my fiance that I'm not attracted to him? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's me on Instagram. He planned out the most amazing proposal. He took me down to a lake where we used to hang out with all our friends. As we started getting closer to the lake, there was a pathway of candles. And as soon as I saw those candles, I knew that he was going to propose. And the worst part is the whole time he was proposing, I just kept looking at his face, trying to figure out if I'm attracted to him or not, or if what I feel is just love of a friend that I've loved for years. I was so confused and I didn't know how to say, I don't know. So instead I said yes. Both of our families were right there hiding. They came out and congratulated us. My parents actually could not be happier. They love my fiance. How could they not? He's been my best friend for 10 years. I felt like I was in a racing car and I couldn't pump the brakes. Everything was happening so quickly and I couldn't say, hold on. Like, let me think about this. I was so confused and torn up, and I didn't want to hurt his feelings. I also didn't want to hurt my own feelings. I opened up to my mom and told her exactly how I felt. And she says, I'm not surprised. When I asked her why, she told me that she knew he was never my type of guy, but she knew that he could grow to be one. And that the love he and I feel for each other is just as important as the love a husband and wife might feel. But I explained to her that even though, yes, I truly deeply love him, I'm just not attracted to him. And she confessed that when her and my dad got engaged, she wasn't even in love with him, let alone attracted to him. But she says that all of that came with time. And that all we see in movies is people falling head over heels, having the best sex and the best relationships, and that I needed to realize it was only in movies. After talking to my mom, I felt worse about the entire situation. I was no longer confused. I knew I definitely was not attracted to him. And part of me knew that I would never come to be attracted to him. We had already been together a year at this point, and I still felt nothing when he kissed me. I felt like a liar, felt guilty. Then something happened. A friend group set up a whole party and they wanted us to come. But there were a couple of people that we had never met. And like a scene straight out of a movie, I see this guy from across the room and he looks at me. Instant attraction. I can't even describe it. It's like I just couldn't stop looking at him. And he couldn't stop looking at me either. Every time I looked in his direction, he was always looking at me. Then one of our friends introduced us, as in me and my fiance, to this guy. He was new to the friend group and he had just moved into town. This is what I'm talking about. I want to feel those feelings for whoever I end up marrying, instead of guilt and pity. I told my parents I was going to break off the engagement, but they want me to reconsider. And no, I haven't had any contact with that guy, obviously. The feeling he gave me, isn't that what I should be feeling for my fiance? I'm speaking to him tonight, so I will be posting a third part to this story time tomorrow. Wish me luck and give me some tips on what I should say to him. Don't want to hurt him, but I know he's going to get hurt anyway. And I don't want to lie to him. I just want to tell him the truth. I'm not attracted to you. But how do I say that without making him feel like he's ugly or something? Help me out. Talk your sister out. Story time about how my high school principal tried to date me after I graduated. TW, if you think this is gross, don't watch. And disclaimers, is not my story time. It's been 10 years since this happened, but when I was in high school, I was really popular. I was in the cheerleading squad, the badminton team, the volleyball team, and drama club. All the teachers knew me and I got along with almost all the students. I never had any problems with girls or guys. My high school principal was a huge history buff, and so was I. One day I went to his office and asked him if I could start a history club. He was really impressed by this and he said yes. I started asking students if they wanted to join, and mostly it was only boys. And these were the boys that I knew had a crush on me, but I made a promise to my parents that I would focus solely on school and not boys. So that meant no boyfriends for me, and I was totally fine with that. I wasn't boy crazy or anything. I really just wanted to get into a good college and make my parents proud. After I formed the club, the principal asked me me if he could sit in on some of the sessions. I said, of course. Our history club would get together every Wednesday, and he would always show up without fail. I mean, obviously, I thought that he was interested in history, and he just wanted to share this experience with us, but clearly I was wrong. After a few weeks, things were getting a little strange. When it was my turn to read, I would always notice him staring at me. And he also brought up the fact that there were only boys in the club. I explained to him that they probably just had a crush on me and that at least it was a way to get them into the club. He told me I needed to find girls because I was too much of a distraction for the boys. But the way that he said it just sounded like he was really jealous. I did my best to get girls in the club, but literally nobody wanted to join. After a few days, I realized that maybe the best thing for me was just to cancel the club. I was already in so many other clubs, and I didn't want to sacrifice my grades. I basically told the guys that we weren't going to have the club anymore, and they all said that was totally fine. But when I told the principal, he flipped out. He started yelling at me and told me that if I didn't keep the club going, that I would never make it in life. He said I wasn't being responsible and that I was letting down the club. So then I was basically forced into continuing the club. But then things got even stranger. He started showing up to every single get-together. And every time that it was over, he would ask me if he could walk me to my car. I mean, at first I thought he was just doing it so that I could be careful, I guess. But we were still on school property and I'm pretty sure nothing was gonna happen to me. That's when he started asking me if I had a boyfriend or if I liked any boys. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my high school principal tried to date me after I graduated. Trigger warning, if you find this subject gross, please don't watch. And disclaimer, this is not my story time. That's when my principal started asking me if I was dating any boys or if I had any crushes on boys. I obviously felt very uncomfortable when he asked me this, so I simply answered no. Then he told me that I could be honest with him. That's when I told him that I made my parents a promise because I was so close to graduating high school and avoid any distractions like boys. That's when he said that I was an amazing woman and that he wished more of the female students were like me. I quickly got in my car and went home. By the way, I was 2 months away from graduating from high school. Now this is when things start to get really weird. I started seeing him around everywhere in school. Our school was pretty big, but I kept bumping into him everywhere. Every time I would see him, he would be like, "Ho ho, are you stalking me?" I would laugh it off and continue walking. One day after history club, he asked me to come to his office with him. He said that he had a surprise for me. He took me to his office and gave me a book on history. I thanked him and tried to leave as quickly as possible, but then he said, "Don't you like it?" So I stood there having to pretend that I was happy that he gave me this book, when in actuality, it made me really uncomfortable. That's when he said that he had seen me in the library reading a book on World War II, and that he just wanted to surprise me with the same book. So this was already letting me know 2 things. Number 1, he's watching me around school and at the library. And number 2, I'm not noticing when he's watching me. I was so creeped out, but I managed to keep my cool. I said thank you again and basically ran away. For the rest of that week, I tried to avoid him as much as I could. I didn't go anywhere near his office, and I avoided the library, which was one of my favorite places in the school. At this point, graduation was only a week away. I was totally wrapped up in my studies that I actually forgot about the principal. Until one day I get a friend request from him on Facebook. At first I thought it was weird, but then I accepted because I figured, well, I'm graduating, so I'm not really going to be seeing him anymore. 5 minutes after I accepted his friend request, I get this really long message from him praising me, saying all these great things about me. I didn't know how to respond, so I simply said thanks. Finally, the day of graduation came and I was forced to see him face to face. That's when he told me that he actually had another gift for me. That's when he hands me an envelope with a blank check. He had the biggest smile on his face. I told him I couldn't accept it and he got mad. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how my high school principal tried to date me after I graduated. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. After he hands me the blank check, I look at it and tell him that I simply cannot accept it. That's when he gets really angry, snatches the check from me, and tells me that he'll see me later. After the graduation ceremony, I was so happy and I was with my family. That's when he walks up behind me and asks me to keep the check. My family is watching this whole thing go down, by the way. I look at him and say thank you, but no. He then introduces himself to my family. But of course, he doesn't bring up the whole check thing. We all say goodbye and my family and I go have dinner. That very night, he sends me a message on Facebook again, saying that he shouldn't have given me the check. And he felt like he had crossed the line. I actually felt really bad, so I replied asking him to not feel bad. A week later, I get a text message from him. He said that he took the liberty of looking up my phone number and that he actually really wanted to speak to me. He asked if we could meet up for a coffee, and I said yes, unfortunately. We meet up at the coffee shop, and as soon as we sit down, he starts to confess his feelings for me. He said that I was basically his dream girl and that all he wanted was a wife like me. And he also asked me if I would ever consider dating him. I was actually too stunned to speak. As soon as he realized I wasn't saying yes, he asked me not to say anything, got up and left. I ran home and told my parents everything. My parents were really angry. My dad went straight to the cops. The cops told my dad that they had complaints from other students. He apparently did the same thing to them and asked them out once they graduated. And guess what? One of them said yes. The cops even investigated him after. My girlfriend abandoned me on my birthday so she could go hang out with her guy best friend. Part 2. After I told her I did not want her best friend coming to my birthday getaway, she threw a tantrum, called him, and complained about me in front of me to him. I was actually so hurt that I grabbed the phone and hung up. She looked at me and told me that I had no right to take the phone from her and blah, blah, blah. That's when I broke down into tears and asked her point blank, do you have a crush on this guy? Immediately she said no. But then she told me she had a confession. She proceeded to tell me that they both lost each other's V cards to each other. And that's why they were so close. And that because they're trying to work on their relationship, I should let him come to my birthday trip, the one I'm paying for. I asked her if she had feelings for him once again, and she said no. And then I asked her if he has feelings for her. This girl just stayed quiet. Then she had the gall to say, what if he does? Is that really that bad? I actually had to explain to her why that would be a bad situation. Finally, my birthday comes around and she is nowhere to be seen. I was waiting for her in my car to drive to the cabin with her. An hour later, after she's supposed to be there, she sends me a text saying that she's gonna stay with him and that hopefully this distance will make our relationship stronger. Instead, I took my whole family to the cabin and now I'm ignoring her. Now she's been calling me nonstop. I took her not showing up as a breakup, but she wants me back. What should I do? Story time about how my creepy uncle flirts with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. I come from a really big family. My mom has 5 sisters and 1 brother, and my dad has 4 brothers and sisters. All of them have their own kids, so I have a lot of cousins. And this means we have a lot of family get-togethers. Every single weekend, someone is hosting a party. We all get together and eat, and it's actually a really nice time. But there's always that one creepy uncle. In my case, it's my mom's brother. He's 46-year-old and has never married, but he's a bachelor. He's got money, so he basically has a bunch of sugar babies. Whenever my family tells him that he needs to get married, he says he'll never get married to anybody. He thinks women only exist for the pleasure of men. When I turned 16, I noticed that he would stare at me a lot. At first, it was just staring. Every now and again, he never did anything really creepy then, but just the staring was enough for me. I never told my mom about it then, not until I turned 18. This is when he started making comments like, wow, you're growing into your body, or wow, you got great hips. He would make comments about how I was growing up, like, ew. He even told my dad that he needed to keep me away from guys because I was growing up really quickly. And because of my curves, men would think that I was a woman. This is when I finally told my mom that he was making me super uncomfortable. She thought it was funny at first, so I avoided him at all costs. Part 2. Story time about how my creepy uncle flirts with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's me on Instagram. When I told my mom that he was making me super uncomfortable, she laughed it off. She thought it was funny. She said, oh, you know how he is. So from that point on, I basically avoided my uncle every time we were at a family event. When I turned 20, this is when things got even worse. He would ask me things like if I was a virgin, or if I had a boyfriend, if I had ever been on dates. And one time he even told me that he would get very jealous if I ended up bringing a guy to one of our family events. One time he complimented me on the dress that I was wearing, so after that, I only wore baggy clothes to family events. The fact that I had to change the way that I dress so that he could control himself makes me sick. I finally told my mom again that my uncle was always bothering me. It's when she told me that the world is filled with men like him, and that all I needed to do was just ignore him. So I told my dad everything. My dad took it a little more seriously and told my uncle that he needed to stop making comments. My uncle just laughed. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my creepy uncle flirts with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. I finally told my dad and he told my uncle to stop making comments. My uncle just laughed and told my dad that he was overreacting, and that all he said to me was that I was a pretty girl. What a liar. In part 1 and 2, I told you guys that it was getting worse, but here's where it actually gets even worse. Like I said, I have a really big family, so my cousins are growing up too. One of them just turned 13 and my uncle cannot stop staring at her. She's maturing a lot quicker than most 13-year-olds. He's already staring at her. So here's what I did. At the next family event, I sat right next to him. Every time he would stare at one of my cousins or try to make a comment at me, I called him out for it in front of everybody. I even recorded the things that he said. The fact that I even have to do this at a family event makes me sick. Instead of enjoying my time with my family, I have to sit next to my creepy uncle policing him. Anyway, it's totally worth it though. I'm making sure that my cousins don't feel uncomfortable. After I had enough recordings of him saying nasty things, at the next family event, I showed it to my grandma. I basically played it for the entire family. My grandma told him that he couldn't come to any more events if he was going to behave that way. And of course, he apologized to everyone right away. But not to me, he apologized to my dad. After his half-ass apology, he was let back into family events. I don't think that's enough punishment. Give me some ideas because I think I deserve justice. Creepy uncle. My boyfriend is moving in with his girl best friend and I don't trust her one bit. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's send me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been together for almost a year. When I met him, he already had a very big group of best friends. One of them was this girl. There's actually another girl in the group, but my boyfriend and this particular girl, let's call her Lacey. Lacey is completely obsessed with my boyfriend. I tell him all the time, but he doesn't want to listen to me. She goes out of her way to spend time with him, and she'll do girlfriend things for him. Sometimes she'll call him and say, I cooked us dinner, come over to my apartment. She even goes to his apartment and helps him do laundry. Let me go back though. When we started dating, he asked me not to be uncomfortable and that him and her were only good friends. But as soon as I saw them with each other, it was visible that she was in love with him. When he first brought me around to meet his friends, she was super territorial. She would sit next to him and even sat on his lap in front of me. and this made my boyfriend uncomfortable. He asked her to sit on a chair instead of his lap. After that, I asked him if he had feelings for her, and he said no. He said he's only ever seen her as a sister, that the thought of hooking up with her makes him want to vomit. Lacey reached out to me and asked me to have lunch with her. Throughout the whole lunch, all she talked about was my boyfriend, and how amazing he is, and how only a good girl deserves him. Part 2 is up. My boyfriend is moving in with his girl best friend, and I don't trust her. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. And her and I went to lunch. All she talked about was my boyfriend. That's when she started saying things like, he only deserves a really good girl. That's when I was straight up with her. I told her that he had already chosen me because he loved me, and that I didn't need her to tell me what my boyfriend needed. You guys should have seen the look on this girl's face. She was shocked that I would defend myself and even talk back to her. Then she said, oh my god, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel bad. I told her that I didn't feel bad, and that I knew what she was doing. She was basically trying to intimidate me and make me feel that I wasn't good enough for my boyfriend. She denied it and started apologizing, but at least I made it clear to her that I was not stupid, and that she was not gonna walk all over me like she probably did with all of his exes. By the way, one of his past girlfriends actually broke up with her because of this girl. I mean, Lacey. Found this out through one of the other friends. They told me that I needed to be careful with her, and that's why I was prepared to go to lunch with her. Guess what happened though? I called my boyfriend to say hi to him, and that's when he starts yelling at me. He said Lacey called him to tell him that I had attacked her at lunch, that I basically threatened her. I explained to him what happened from my point of view, and he said that she was probably just overreacting. But it was her word against mine. Part 3 is up. My boyfriend is moving in with his girl best friend, and I do not trust her. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sent me on Instagram. After Lacey told my boyfriend that I had attacked her and threatened her, he told me to keep my distance. So I did. But that meant that he would hang out with her without me. I found this completely unacceptable. That's when I told my boyfriend that she was manipulative, that she had clearly planned everything out so that he and her could be alone. Then I told him that his ex-girlfriend left him because of her. He told me that I didn't know the full story and that I should mind my own business. That's when I noticed that he wouldn't come over to my apartment every day. And guess why? His best friend Lacey told him that she had a stalker, and that she needed my boyfriend to stay over her house so that she could feel protected and safe. I just can't. I told him that she was clearly manipulating him and probably lying about the stalker situation so that he could spend more time with her. And just like that, 2 days later, he told me that they were moving in together, and that she miraculously found an apartment big enough for the two of them. In 2 days? I don't think so. I think she had been planning this the whole time, and my boyfriend is just stupid enough to fall for it. I told him if he moved in with her that he should just forget about me. He begged me not to leave him, so I guess I'm still his girlfriend. He's still debating whether or not to move in with her. He says he doesn't want to lose me, but he wants to be able to be there for her. I think I should break up with him, but maybe there's another solution. What do you guys think I should do?
Story time about how I was accused of sexually harassing my coworker. This is my story time. I did post this yesterday, but it was like 5 minutes long, so here we are. Back in 2018, I had just gotten married, and my best friend was working at a company called S3 in New York City. I was so excited to get this job, you guys. I was so broke at the time. Before that, I had worked as everything. I was an assistant, maid, served at like 20 different restaurants, worked at the strip club, and I did a whole slew of other things. This job paid me $8,000 a month. It was amazing. Like, I thought I was set for life. The job was pretty simple, and it was really stress-free. I had to make phone calls and sell a financial app, and I was pretty good at it. Like I said, my best friend got me this job, and it was really nice because I got to hang out with her every single day at work. Now, my desk was next to somebody called Justin. Justin was one of the salespeople at the company. I heard from a few people that before I got there, Justin was not the friendliest. He wouldn't make jokes or laugh, but after I got there, his attitude completely changed. To be honest, I had fun with him and he was a great coworker, but of course, that was it. I didn't see him as anything else other than a coworker. He and I would make jokes all the time, talked about music and movies. He would talk to me about his dating life, and I would give him advice. This man either had really strong feelings for me, or he really hated me, because he ended up getting me fired. Part 2 is story time about how I was accused of sexual harassment and I got fired for it. This is my personal story time, by the way. The villain of the story, named Justin, he and I got along really well, and I sat next to him every single day at work. By the way, Justin was the youngest guy out of the entire company. Everyone else was middle-aged white men, while me and my best friend are beautiful and young and gorgeous. As you can imagine, we got stared at a lot. To be honest, this didn't really bother me because I've been stared at a lot in life. But when you find out what happened, it's infuriating. Walking down the street doing this voiceover. This is how badly I want to post this. The owner of the company is Bob. Bob and I got along really well. You see, I thought I was taken seriously in this workplace. I thought that I had value. But of course, apparently to these older white men, I did not. Today I get home from work and I get a message from Gabe, my manager. I don't like Gabe. Gabe told me not to come into work. And the following day, he tells me not to come into work again. Can you see how this would freak anyone out? I had a really bad feeling. Serena had no idea what was going on. If she did, she would tell me. This girl had my back always. Part 3 will be up soon. Story time about how I was accused of sexually harassing my coworker and got fired for it. This is my personal story time. Well, when I was told for the second time not to come into work, I was completely freaked out. Serena, who got me the job, asked me to meet her at Central Park. I had a bad feeling. Can you guys believe that S3 asked my best friend to fire me? They didn't have the balls to do it themselves because they knew that what they were firing me for was completely unfair. I get to Central Park and Serena tells me that they fire me. By the way, another coworker was there. His name was Jason. By the way, Jason had the same job as Serena and I and got paid a lot more. Inequality does exist. Went into a depression. I was anxious, was afraid, didn't know what had happened. Emailed the company asking what happened and they didn't want to tell me. Anyway, a couple of months later, I find out that Justin had gotten me fired. He told the boss that I was offering him blowjobs. By the way, when I got fired, Justin offered me financial help, pretended to be my friend. What an asshole. October of that same year, he performed the song in Culiacan live. He projected an image of El Chapo in the background the entire time. As you can imagine, this was pretty offensive to a lot of people. After that, he denied that he had any connection to the cartel. And then we have the iconic video of him talking about Bad Bunny at a concert.
En todo puto México, somos los primeros que han puesto un corrido en el top 1, superando al pendejo del Bad Bunny. ¿Por qué? Porque los mexicanos somos la puta verga.
But then him and Bad Bunny were seen talking at a concert. I don't know if it was at Coachella or something like that. I think they're probably on good terms, and it also benefits Bad Bunny if he is. Peso Pluma is everywhere right now, and if he were to collaborate with anybody, it should probably be Peso Pluma just because they're both so popular. March 17 of 2023, Ella Baila Sola was released.
Story time about how my boyfriend is bullying me into losing weight. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been together for 2 months. He's a personal trainer, so he's really into fitness. When we started dating, I wasn't super fit, but I definitely was toned. Unfortunately, I got the Rona, so I got fired from my job because I couldn't work for 2 weeks. I was super sick and I really became depressed. I basically sat on my couch for those 2 weeks and ate a lot. Before I knew it, I had gained 7 pounds. When I finished my quarantine, I finally was able to see my boyfriend. And when he first came into my house to see me, he looked shocked. He looked me up and down and said, "Did you gain weight?" I said, "Yeah, I probably gained like 7 or 10 pounds. And then he asked me how I could let myself go like that. I told him I was totally by myself, cooped up in my apartment, and I had nothing else to do but eat. And that's when he said, and I quote, "Well, we need to get you back into the gym to get you in shape again, because I don't want a fat girlfriend." I laughed because I thought for sure he's joking, but then he said, "Stop laughing, it's not a joke." My stomach sank and I felt like I was gonna poop my pants. I started to cry and he told me that I shouldn't be a baby, that he's allowed to be honest with me about stuff like this because it has to do with him being attracted to me. So in other words, he wasn't attracted to me anymore. That's when he went into my room, picked out a pair of leggings and a sweatshirt, told me to get dressed, and took me straight to the gym. He made me exercise for an hour and a half. Instead of getting upset about it, I decided to just take it in stride and go with it. I thought maybe I can get in the best shape of my life now that I have a trainer boyfriend. As we were working out, he kept commenting on my thighs. He said that they needed to have a gap and that instead of being muscular, I was super soft. Again, I started to cry. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my boyfriend is bullying me into losing weight. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. After he told me that I was soft at the gym, I started to cry again. I told him that I needed to be more sensitive towards my feelings and that I didn't want to be in a relationship if he was going to be like this toward me. That's when he said that he didn't want to be in a relationship with me because I had gained weight and that's not what he had signed up for. That's when he told me I needed to look around and see all the fit women in the gym and that he could have any of those girls. I was in utter shock. I just couldn't believe that he was talking to me like that, and I had never seen that side of him before. The more I cried, the angrier he got, but finally he said, "Okay, I'm sorry. Let's just do 20 minutes on the Stairmaster." That's when I told him I didn't want to work out anymore. Mind you, he had already had me at the gym for an hour and a half. That's when he said, "Fine, I'll take you home, but I'm coming back to the gym." The whole way home, he stayed quiet and gave me the cold shoulder while I cried. He pulled up to my house and I got out of the car and he literally sped away as fast as he could. He proceeded to give me the cold shoulder for the next 2 days. I finally broke and texted him telling him we needed to speak. That's when he said we could talk at the gym. I agreed and he went to pick me up. But the first thing he wanted to do at the gym was put me on a scale and weigh me. I told him absolutely not. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how my boyfriend is bullying me into losing weight. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. He was trying to force me to get on the scale so that he could weigh me because he wanted to see how much weight I could lose in 1 week. I kept saying no, but then he said fine. Then he handed me a piece of paper and said, "Here's the diet I want you to follow for the next 4 weeks." I grabbed the piece of paper and just put it in my purse. Then he has the audacity to get mad at me for not even looking at the diet. He said that I was disrespectful and that I didn't even look at the diet and that it took him hours to write all of that out. And then he said the thing that crushed my heart. He would be embarrassed to take me around his friends and family with the way that I looked. As soon as he said that, I ran out of the gym and walked home. Of course, he followed me and told me to get in the car, but I refused. I finally got to my house and he called me. I told him I needed some time away from him and that his behavior was extremely toxic. and that if I didn't have a problem with my weight, neither should he. That's when he said that he was accustomed to only being with girls that were super fit and even had abs. He told me that at first he wasn't convinced if he should date me, but I had a really pretty face, and that he was willing to overlook the fact that I wasn't super fit. He's a total narcissist, but I'm still in love with him. I tried to break up with him, but he said no, and he's still insisting that we just go to the gym together at least. I don't even know how to respond to him. What should I say? Here's a story time about when I broke off my 1.5-year engagement with my ex-fiance. We met on a movie set. He was playing my boyfriend, and within a week, we were already calling each other boyfriend and girlfriend. 2 months into the relationship, he convinced me to move to LA with him because we both wanted to pursue acting seriously, and he was an established model already. He had worked in Tokyo and Paris as a model. Of course, I was so in love. I said yes, and I left my family, which was really heartbreaking for them. I will totally always regret that decision because I left way too soon. I was so young. We struggled for money in LA, but I decided to get a serving job, so I was making more money than he was because he was working at a movie theater making $8 an hour. Because of this, I had to pay for a lot of the bills, and I even started helping him pay off his school loans. We also shared a banking account, which was terrible because I was putting in way more money than he was. I hated the apartment we lived in because I would wake up with roaches in my hair, so I decided to get a second serving job. When I asked him to get a second job as well, he said no because he was very happy at his job. Part 2 is up. Part 2. So I asked my fiance if he could get a second job to help me out with the bills, and he said no. I would tell my mom and sisters about the situation, and they would tell me that he should definitely be helping me out more, and I just would make up excuses for him, and I just thought it's okay, he can work at the movie theater, and I will work my 2 jobs. At this point, I was paying for most of the rent, most of the bills, and his student school loans. I owed $20,000, you guys, and I was paying for all of that. I even got a 3rd job because I wanted to save up to move out of that crappy apartment. Finally, I got hired at the strip club as a cocktail waitress, and I was able to quit all of my other jobs. My ex-fiance was definitely happy with the amount of money I was making at the strip club. Of course, he felt absolutely no pressure to get a new job and help me out. I finally put my foot down and told him we were moving to a better apartment because I was not happy in the apartment we were in. I told him he had no right to say no because I was the one paying for everything. We found the perfect apartment and I loved it. It was absolutely beautiful and I felt so at home there. Then one night I was sexually assaulted at the strip club. Of course, I was really affected by it. At first he was supportive, but after a few days he basically told me to get over it. 3. When he told me to just get over the sexual assault that I experienced at the strip club, I was shocked. I couldn't believe that the man I was about to marry would be so insensitive. And then I just started realizing, wait, I am paying for everything. I pay for your bills, I pay for your rent, I pay for your student loans, and you're here telling me to just get over this sexual assault. It was like someone had put a mirror to my face and was showing me the truth. The final straw was when I told him I wanted to quit the strip club because I didn't want to be in that environment and I didn't want to see the man that had sexually assaulted me again. He said, absolutely not, you can't quit, the money is too good. And that's when I broke up with him. I told him that I couldn't be with someone who didn't care enough about me and only really cared about the money and to be kept. He was so comfortable with me paying for everything and him just chilling at a job where he got paid $8 an hour while I was busting my butt every single night. He told me I would never find anyone better than him. The breakup was amicable, thank God. He didn't stress me out or anything. He kind of said, you know, you'll be back. Of course, I never went back. Know your worth and be with someone who actually cares about you.
My boyfriend is moving in with his girl best friend and I don't trust her one bit. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been together for almost a year. When I met him, he already had a very big group of best friends. One of them was this girl. There's actually another girl in the group, but my boyfriend and this particular girl, let's call her Lacey. Lacey is completely obsessed with my boyfriend. I tell him all the time, but he doesn't want to listen to me. She goes out of her way to spend time with him, and she'll do girlfriend things for him. Sometimes she'll call him and say, I cooked us dinner, come over to my apartment. She even goes to his apartment and helps him do laundry. Let me go back though. When we started dating, he asked me not to be uncomfortable and that him and her were only good friends. But as soon as I saw them with each other, it was visible that she was in love with him. When he first brought me around to meet his friends, she was super territorial. She would sit next to him and even sat on his lap in front of me. And this made my boyfriend uncomfortable. He asked her to sit on a chair instead of his lap. After that, I asked him if he had feelings for her and he said no. He said he's only ever seen her as a sister, that the thought of hooking up with her makes him want to vomit. Lacey reached out to me and asked me to have lunch with her. Throughout the whole lunch, all she talked about was my boyfriend, how amazing he is, and how only a good girl deserves him. Part 2 is up. My boyfriend is moving in with his girl best friend and I don't trust her. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. And her and I went to lunch. All she talked about was my boyfriend. That's when she started saying things like, he only deserves a really good girl. That's when I was straight up with her. I told her that he had already chosen me because he loved me and that I didn't need her to tell me what my boyfriend needed. You guys should have seen the look on this girl's face. She was shocked that I would defend myself and even talk back to her. Then she said, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel bad. I told her that I didn't feel bad and that I knew what she was doing. She was basically trying trying to intimidate me and make me feel that I wasn't good enough for my boyfriend. She denied it and started apologizing, but at least I made it clear to her that I was not stupid and that she was not gonna walk all over me like she probably did with all of his exes. By the way, one of his past girlfriends actually broke up with her because of this girl. I mean, Lacey. Found this out through one of the other friends. They told me that I needed to be careful with her. That's why I was prepared to go to lunch with her. Guess what happened though? I called my boyfriend to say hi to him, and that's when he starts yelling at me. He said Lacey called him to tell him that I had attacked her at lunch, that I basically threatened her. I explained to him what happened from my point of view, and he said that she was probably just overreacting. But it was her word against mine. Part 3 is up. My boyfriend is moving in with his girl best friend and I do not trust her. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. After Lacey told my boyfriend that I had attacked her and threatened her, he told me to keep my distance. So I did. But that meant that he would hang out with her without me. I found this completely unacceptable. That's when I told my boyfriend that she was manipulative, that she had clearly planned everything out so that he and her could be alone. Then I told him that his ex-girlfriend left him because of her. He told me that I didn't know the full story and that I should mind my own business. That's when I noticed that he wouldn't come over to my apartment every day. And guess why? His best friend Lacey told him that she had a stalker and that she needed my boyfriend to stay over her house so that she could feel protected and safe. I just can't. I told him that she was clearly manipulating him and probably lying about the stalker situation so that he could spend more time with her. And just like that, 2 days later, he told me that they were moving in together and that she miraculously found an apartment big enough for the two of them. In 2 days? I don't think so. I think she had been planning this the whole time, and my boyfriend is just stupid enough to fall for it. I told him if he moved in with her that he should just forget about me. He begged me not to leave him, so I guess I'm still his girlfriend. He's still debating whether or not to move in with her. He says he doesn't want to lose me, but he wants to be able to be there for her. I think I should break up with him, but maybe there's another solution. What do you guys think I should do?